It's Thursday, November 14th, 2024. Is this God-tier level trolling or the art of the deal in action? The swampiest of creatures will lead the Senate, but promises to work with the new administration, and more from our new border czar next on the AM Update.
Is it safe to say that based off of your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies are ugly and overweight?
Yes.
What do you say to people who think that those comments are offensive?
Be offended.
That is Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. Now, former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, during an interview a few years ago at a pro-baby killing rally, saying that most of the women there are fat and ugly. He is Donald Trump's pick to be Attorney General. And the shocker of all shockers, Donald Trump announced on Truth Social yesterday it was his great honor to announce his pick for Attorney General. He said, quote, Matt is a deeply gifted and tenacious attorney trained at the William and Mary College of Law, who has distinguished himself in Congress through his focus on achieving desperately needed reform at the Department of Justice. This was a shocking. Nobody saw this coming across both sides of the aisle yesterday. Of course, all the usual suspects, the furrowed brow brigade, of course, was all over this, saying this is the worst appointment ever. The same people who voted for Kamala Harris think that it's a terrible appointment. The typical rhino wing or America last wing of the Republican Party, there's always already whispers that this is going nowhere. If here's Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, his take is probably as good as any.
I would describe it as God-tier level trolling to just trigger a full-on China syndrome to own the libs in perpetuity.
So that is John Fetterman's take that the selection of Matt Gaetz for Attorney General is quote unquote God tier level trolling. I think at the very least that's probably on the right track. At most, this could be art of the deal. I could see you throw somebody in there like Matt Gaetz, and all of a sudden you could get another solid Attorney General, a tenacious Attorney General. And all of a sudden, that doesn't have the baggage, allegedly, that Matt Gaetz has, and that's an easier sell in front of that Republican Senate. But we'll see. I'm not really sure where this goes. Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, has more comments on what actually went down here and what is coming in the future as far as Trump appointments go. He's been appointing a fair amount of Republican congressmen and women. And if you didn't notice, they have a very slim margin in that chamber of Congress. So he has some more insights on what's coming. Mike Johnson does, coming up at the end of today's episode. Just want to remind you, tomorrow is another edition of Ask or Tell Me Anything. You can ask me any question you want. Tell me any news story that you think needs to be covered on the AM Update. Look for the pinned tweet at Real AM Update on X. At Real AM Update on X. Ask or Tell Me Anything on the Friday edition. South Dakota Senator John Thune has won the leadership fight in that chamber of Congress. Thune won on the second round of voting. Florida Senator Rick Scott was knocked out after the first round. He was the choice of many in Donald Trump's orbit. John Thune is no stranger to criticism of Donald Trump. That's not always a bad thing if it's coming from the right perspective. I don't think it is, though, when it comes to Mr. Thune. Here's a brief compilation of his thoughts over the years about Donald Trump. Seems very Pensian.
Donald Trump is the Republican nominee. Would you support him?
Well, I'm hoping, Leanne, to have other options.
The number 2 Senate Republican, South Dakota's John Thune, is voicing concerns yesterday about Trump's impact on down-ballot races heading into 2024. Here's what he said yesterday.
If you look at the record in 18, 20, and 22, when he's the issue, we lose. And so I would rather have the issue be Biden and his policies. And I think the way that you do that is you get a different nominee, which is why I'd endorse somebody else.
So that is Senate Majority Leader John Thune saying when the issue is about Donald Trump in elections, they lose. Well, the issue wasn't about Donald Trump this election. The Democrats tried to make it so, but the Trump campaign just did a good job of making it a referendum on really Joe Biden and a number of other issues as well. On the other hand, though, Thune spoke after winning the leadership vote in the Senate yesterday and says he's ready and willing to work with the president.
And when it comes to choosing nominees who will pass Senate confirmation?
Well, as you know, the Senate has a advise and consent role under the Constitution, so we will do everything we can to process his noms quickly, get them installed in their position so they can begin to implement his agenda.
So that is John Thune. He is a snake, but he says he's a snake who's willing to work with Donald Trump. We'll just have to wait and see. Speaking of Trump, he met Joe Biden at the White House yesterday. Joe Biden welcomed him with a warm smile, a handshake, and he said he's happy to have Trump there.
In many cases, not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Jim. You're welcome.
So that's Joe Biden saying that Donald Trump is very welcome. Literally, Hitler is very welcome for the smooth transition they've been enjoying. There's a picture taken outside of the White House yesterday of Dr. Jill, Joe, and Trump all standing together, all with the biggest smiles on their faces. Yeah, literally Hitler, my ass. So here is what Donald Trump's cabinet looks like so far, if they were to all be appointed. Of course, you've got Vice President J.D. Vance, Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, UN Ambassador Elise Stefanik, she's a congresswoman from New York, another congressman from New York, Lee Zeldin, administrator of the EPA, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz of Florida, Director of the CIA John Ratcliffe, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem. It was made official yesterday. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Director of National Intelligence, also announced yesterday, former Democrat, former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, and now Attorney General Matt Gaetz, as we talked about at the top of the show. Yesterday, it was Secretary of State, Director of National Intelligence, and Attorney General that was announced. We've still got more than half of the cabinet to be selected so far, and it's a mixed bag at the very worst. At the best, Pete Hegseth now I think has an easier path to getting through Senate confirmation with the nomination of Matt Gaetz. We'll just put it like that. Speaking of Hegseth, the left is already melting down. Here's Whoopi Goldberg on The View.
That's not true. So is this the guy who's qualified to make decisions about the most powerful military in the world, who clearly does not know anything about the military?
Yeah, Hegseth is actually a highly decorated combat veteran. Yeah, he served in Guantanamo Bay, Iraq, Afghanistan, 2 Bronze Stars, degrees from Princeton and Harvard. The ultimate projection there from Whoopi Goldberg. More from Donald Trump's new border czar. Here's Tom Homan on Fox News the other night.
Run it again. And we know what happens to these children, Sean. And look, the illegal aliens coming across the border, people need to understand, 31% of women that make that journey get raped by criminal cartels. Children get raped. I've talked to little girls as young as 9 that have been raped multiple times. These cartels are animals, and that's why President Trump's going to take them off the face of the earth. They have killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world. And President Trump is committed to calling them terrorist organization and using the full might of the United States Special Operations to take them out.
One of the obstacles that will attempt to stand in the way of Tom Homan and Donald Trump's agenda to take out the cartels and perform the largest deportation exercise in American history are blue state governors who seem hell-bent on making sure their states are hellholes during the Trump administration. Here's J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois, just the other day.
But we also want to make sure that there isn't a violation of people's rights with, raids, for example, that are done in coordination with local law enforcement on people who are, frankly, holding down jobs and have been in this country for many, many years. We think that's improper. And in Illinois, that's not something that we would condone. There's been some talk about using other states' National Guard, red state National Guards to somehow come into a blue state and try and enforce these new Stephen Miller-inspired rules. And that's just not something we're going to accept. But
that's J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois. Make no doubt about it. He and others like him, Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro, Gavin Newsom, for what time he has left as governor, they are going to do all they can to thwart the rule of law, which they're already doing. You have to do that to be a Democrat in good standing these days. They're going to do all they possibly can to thwart, get in the way, mire, and muck up Donald Trump's mandate to actually uphold our immigration laws. That's what they're going to do. And I guarantee you that's going to be a problem, but only people like Tom Homan let it be. Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania is not giving up on retaining his U.S. Senate seat. The three-term Democrat is currently locked in a tight race with Dave McCormick, trailing the Republican by just over 29,000 votes as of yesterday afternoon. Pennsylvania Secretary of Commonwealth Al Schmidt announced on Wednesday that unofficial results in the race have triggered a statewide recount. That's because vote totals for McCormick and Casey are within a 0.5% margin, which triggers a statewide recount under state law. According to the Department of State, Casey received 48.5% of the vote with 3,350,972 votes. McCormick had 48.93% with 3,380,310 votes. Counties must begin the recount by November 20th. Now here's this from Not the Bee. In Michigan, a federal jury awarded Catholic woman Lisa Domsky more than $12 million, $10 million of that in punitive damages after she was fired for refusing the COVID vaccine. Domsky worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield in the state for 30 years and was 100% remote during the pandemic, as well as 75% remote previously while working as an information technology specialist. Despite requesting a religious exemption for the COVID vax, Blue Cross refused, triggering a lawsuit from Domsky, who claims she was a victim of religious discrimination. Her attorney, John Marco, said in a statement, quote, "Our forefathers fought and died for the freedom for each American to practice his or her religion. Neither the government nor a corporation has a right to force an individual to choose between his or her career and conscience. Lisa refused to announce her faith and beliefs and was wrongfully terminated from the only job she has ever known." The jury's verdict today tells Blue Cross Blue Shields of Michigan that religious discrimination has no place in America and affirms each person's right to religious freedom. The jury awarded Domsky $10 million in punitive damages, $1.7 million in lost wages, and $1 million in non-economic damages. Incredible. I hope that's a shot across the bow the next time they try to force an experimental drug, therapeutic, on the country. And finally, what's actually going on with the U.S. House and Donald Trump appointing several members of the Congress to fill his administration? Here is Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, speaking last night and talking about what's happened with Matt Gaetz and what happens next.
Matt and I were classmates. We came to Congress at the same time in the 115th Congress in January 2017. And alphabetically, we're seated right next to one another in Judiciary Committee. We served there together for 7 years. Some of y'all who cover Judiciary know those are long meetings. So I got to know Matt very well. Look, I'll say this. Everyone who served with him will tell you he's one of the most intelligent members of Congress. He's an accomplished attorney. He's very concerned about the lawfare that has been occurring in the Department of Justice under the Biden administration, and the fact that the American people have lost their faith in our institutions of justice because of everything that they've seen. He's a reformer in his mind and heart, and I think that he'll bring a lot to the table on that. I think out of deference to us, he issued his resignation letter effective immediately of Congress. That caught us by surprise a little bit, but I asked him what the reasoning was, and he said, well, you can't have too many absences. So under Florida state law, there's about an 8-week period to select and fill a vacant seat. And so by doing so today, that allows me, I've already placed a call to Governor DeSantis in Florida and said, let's start the clock. He's in Italy at the moment, and so we're going to talk first thing in the morning about this. And if we start the clock now, if you do the math, we may be able to fill that seat as early as January 3rd when we take the new oath of office for the new Congress. So Matt would have done us a great service by making that decision as he did on the fly, and so we're grateful for that. So we move forward. Look, I'll say this about people have asked me all day long, President Trump is poaching all of your talent. Yes, we have an embarrassment of riches here. The Republican conference is full of talented people who are extraordinary leaders and have great expertise, and everyone in this Congress, in this conference, could serve in a leadership position in the administration.
So that's Speaker of the House Mike Johnson discussing what actually happened with Matt Gaetz. It raised my eyebrow even further when Matt Gaetz stepped down. That news came out last night. He actually resigned immediately, which means he's serious about taking this and seeing this all the way through. Because before I heard that, I thought that Gaetz probably wasn't going to resign. Might last until Thanksgiving, something like that. I've been wrong about a lot of stuff politically recently, so I wasn't beholden to that. I wasn't clinging on to that analysis necessarily. This sets up a really interesting dynamic. It would be something else for a Matt Gaetz, and he has been, depending on whose perspective you believe, he has been targeted by the DOJ. This is from mainstream media, so I don't trust this as far as you can throw it, but apparently in a couple of days, there were supposed to be the results of the House Ethics Committee or whatever it is on Gaetz's alleged sexual improprieties or something like that. And now they're not going to release that because it's not under their purview, domain, jurisdiction. Is this an elaborate plot to get Gaetz out of Congress and replace him with somebody else? While Donald Trump can claim that he had his guys back by appointing him as Attorney General. I don't know. What I do know is I'm going to kind of watch how this plays out, because Donald Trump has said recently, I think it was at a rally, maybe the week before the election, Mike Johnson was in attendance, and Trump said, yeah, Mike, you know about our little secret? It was something along those lines. Very interesting. So don't make any snap decisions, any snap opinions about what is the dynamic at play here. This is a long-winded way of saying I really don't know what's going on here. Because honestly, I just laughed when I saw, not because I thought it was a bad appointment, I just thought it was the biggest, just the nomination alone of Matt Gaetz for Attorney General was just the biggest middle finger to all of Donald Trump's enemies in the deep state. Just nominating him alone, not even getting him voted on. Now that Gaetz is resigning, could we see an Attorney General Gaetz? I'm not giving a seal of approval. I mean, there are a lot worse options. Something more is afoot here. We're going to keep watching it. All right, that'll do it for Thursday. Remember, tomorrow is Ask or Tell Me Anything. You can ask me any question you want, tell me any news story you think needs covered on the AM Update. Or to find me at Real AM Update on X, at Real AM Update on X. That'll do it. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.